Scarborough has no wish for a greater influx of vagrants and those who have no money to spend. Scarborough is rising daily in the estimation of the public as a fashionable watering place on account of its natural beauty and tranquility. And in a few years more, the novelty of not having a railroad will be its greatest recommendation. Those were the words of George Knowles in a pamphlet published in 1840, and how history would prove him wrong. 4 years later, construction would begin on the 4th July 1844, and just 1 year and 3 days later, on the 7th of July 1845, the York-Scarborough line would be opened. Before the railways, if you wanted to get to Scarborough, you'd have to take the daily coach, which ran all year on the York-Scarborough road, which follows roughly now where the A64 is. The fares were very high in relation to the earning power of the time and too expensive for the majority of people. In 4 weeks, during the July of 1843, the height of the summer season in Scarborough, the mail coach carried only 168 passengers from York to Scarborough and 172 on the reverse trip. Compare this with the passenger numbers at the end of the century, with over 220,000 bookings from Scarborough. A line to Scarborough depended on the developments here at York. And in 1935, the York and North Midland Railway Company was set up with the so-called Railway King, George Hudson, being the driving force behind it, with the line to Normanton connecting to the Leeds and Selby. To service this, a temporary wooden platform outside the city walls was built on Queen Street to service the line. An extension to Scarborough was a natural feature of Hudson's plans. Focus soon returned to the Scarborough line, and after the building of the now old York Station in January 1941, plans for the line to Scarborough soon followed. The first coming from a rival promoter by the name of John Rennie the Younger, who ran a survey during the 1940. George Hudson soon followed, surveying the line. He went over the route himself with the famous George Stephenson, the father of the railways. The bills from both parties were deposited in 1841 and 1842 respectively. This behind me is the River Derwent, which will prove a big factor in the planning of the railway. The Derwent follows a winding valley, squeezed between the Wolds and the Howardian Hills. Both Hudson and Rennies had a different idea on how to approach this. Stephenson planned to cross to the north side of the Derwent at Low Hutton, which is where the line eventually crossed the River Derwent, on the Derwent Bridge, then bypass some of the more challenging bends by tunnelling 1,300 metres under Whitwell Hill. It wasn't until 1843, with Hudson's reputation standing high, that he decided to proceed with the Scarborough line. He procured an additional $260,000 capital from shareholders, and the plans for the line appeared under the name of Robert Stephenson, George's son, with the survey being carried out by one of Robert's assistants, John Cass Birkinshaw, who would eventually oversee construction of the line. Hudson, now taking the idea seriously, had to make significant changes to cut costs and construction time. Hudson was in a hurry to finish the line. He had promised the shareholders the line would open in July 1845. The task of building was split into 4 sections, all 4 falling into the hands of Joseph Crawshaw, who offered a generous 5% discount on getting all 4. Reducing the price of the contract from $65,100 to $61,800. The line was relatively easy to construct. And finally, on the 4th of July 1845, on time, the line was formally inspected by Major General Pasley of the Board of Trade. Going along the route with guests in a 35-carriage train, stopping along the route including at Castle Howard Station, where the train was let by Lord Morpeth and his father, who supplied the guests with strong ale from the cellars. It arrived to the incomplete Scarborough Station some 3 hours later to a hero's welcome, with crowds said to be numbering between 10 and 15,000, with a public holiday declared. There's a quote in the 1870 Railway News Journal. The Scarborough of today is no more like the Scarborough of 20 years ago. The marble is like brick, or brick like marble. Everything is changed, and changed, we need not say, immensely for the better. The change the railways brought to the town cannot be understated. It brought hordes of visitors on holidays and excursions, and with that comes money and development. While the levels of visitors have understandably dipped since the advent of cheap flight, the railway still serves to bring in thousands of visitors upon which Scarborough depends on during the summer months.